In a quiet village under the soft light of dawn, two boys grew up side by side, Ramesh and Dinesh. They shared everything. The same dusty roads, the same school, the same dreams. Both came from humble families who worked hard but had little. When poverty forced them to leave school, they promised each other they'd still make their parents proud. Together they turned to farming, just like their fathers. Every day they worked the same fields, hands rough from labor, hearts full of hope. To anyone watching, their lives seemed identical. Two friends walking the same road. Yet deep inside, a quiet difference was already forming, something unseen that would one day change everything. One evening, after a long day in the fields, Ramesh sat beside his father as the sun disappeared behind the crops. "Baba," he asked softly, "why do some people in our village prosper while others like us always struggle? We all work the same." His father smiled, the wrinkles on his face deep with wisdom. "Son," he said, "the difference isn't in work, but in thinking. Those who plan for tomorrow walk ahead of those who live only for today." The words settled deep in Ramesh's heart. He didn't realize it yet, but a seed had been planted. Not in the soil, but in his soul, a seed of wisdom that would one day grow into a new destiny. When Ramesh finally took charge of his own field, he made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of rushing to buy new tools or finer clothes, he walked quietly to the village post office and opened a small recurring deposit account. It wasn't much, just 200 rupees each month, but to him it wasn't about the amount. "This," he told himself, "is the seed of my future." Whether the harvest was good or bad, whether the rain came or failed, he never skipped a month. Each deposit was a promise to himself, a reminder that discipline was his greatest strength. The villagers often teased him, saying, "What difference will a few hundred rupees make?" Ramesh only smiled. He knew that even the biggest tree begins with a small seed, and he was determined to nurture his own. Dinesh, on the other hand, couldn't help but laugh when he heard about Ramesh's savings. "Brother," he said, "who knows about tomorrow? Enjoy life while you can." To him, life was meant for spending, for pleasure, for fun, for the feeling of living in the moment. He bought new shirts from the town market, hosted dinners for friends, and redecorated his small house every season. He found joy in watching his earnings disappear, believing that saving was just a way to deny himself happiness. Two friends, two habits, one planting seeds, the other plucking flowers before they could bloom. And though neither realized it yet, their choices were already shaping two very different destinies. Seasons turned, and a full year slipped by. Ramesh's modest savings had quietly grown, earning a bit of interest that he treated like a reward for his patience. With that small amount, he bought a second-hand water pump. Nothing grand, but it changed everything. Now, he didn't have to wait for the rain or rely on others to irrigate his land. He could water his crops when they needed it, and soon his fields began to transform. The plants stood taller, greener, stronger. The harvest came earlier and richer. Each time Ramesh looked across his flourishing field, he felt a quiet pride. What had begun as a simple habit was now bearing fruit, proof that discipline, like a seed, always returns a harvest to those who nurture it. Dinesh, meanwhile, wasn't so fortunate. That same year, the rains failed and his crops withered under the sun. To survive, he borrowed money. First a little, then a little more, until the debt grew like a shadow that never left his side. Each time the harvest failed, he blamed the weather, his luck, even the heavens above. But he never once questioned the way he lived. He didn't see that his love for spending had quietly chained him, while Ramesh's small acts of saving had set him free. One man was building his future one step at a time, and the other was watching his slip away, one careless choice after another. One morning, news spread across the village like a cool breeze after a long summer. Government officers had arrived with a new program. Farmers could now buy tractors with a 40% subsidy. For many, it was a dream too big to touch, but Ramesh saw it differently. He didn't waste a moment. Walking to the post office, he withdrew a part of his savings and went straight to the bank. With confidence and a clear plan, he took a small loan and signed the papers. Within days, a red tractor stood gleaming in his yard, a symbol of years of patience finally bearing fruit. No longer did he depend on others for plowing. He worked his fields faster and better than ever before. And when he had spare time, he offered his tractor to other farmers for a small fee. The machine not only turned his soil, but also turned his life, each round of its wheels bringing him closer to freedom and stability. Dinesh's heart burned with the same desire. He too wanted a tractor, a chance to change his life. Hope surged through him as he ran to the bank, clutching the dream with trembling hands. But when the officer looked at his papers, he shook his head gently. "I'm sorry, sir. We need some savings, some security. Without that, we can't approve your loan." The words struck harder than any storm. Dinesh stood there in silence, his hope collapsing beneath the weight of his own choices. As he walked back home, eyes wet with regret, he whispered, "Maybe I'm just unlucky." But deep down, he knew luck had nothing to do with it. Fate wasn't cruel, only his thinking was. And that realization, though painful, was the first light of wisdom dawning after years of darkness. The years passed, and the seeds of Ramesh's discipline began to bloom into a life full of color and stability. His farm prospered as he learned new techniques, experimenting with organic fertilizers and smarter irrigation methods. While other farmers hesitated to change, Ramesh embraced innovation, believing that growth came only to those who dared to learn. His crops grew richer, his income steadier, and his confidence stronger. With each harvest, he not only earned more, but also inspired others to dream bigger. The villagers began to seek his advice, calling him affectionately Ramesh Bhai, the wise farmer. He had become a symbol of quiet strength and wisdom, proof that patience and foresight could turn even the simplest life into something extraordinary. He used his earnings not for luxury, but for legacy, sending his son to the city to study, determined to give him the education he never had. His home stood tall and sturdy now, filled with laughter, gratitude, and the peace that comes only when a man has earned his life with his own hands. One evening, as the sun sank into the horizon and the air carried the scent of ripened crops, Dinesh came to visit. His steps were heavy, his eyes tired but searching for understanding. Sitting beside Ramesh, he said softly, "We started together, brother. Same land, same effort. Why are you rich and I'm still poor?" Ramesh looked at him with kindness, his smile gentle and full of compassion. "The difference isn't in the soil, my friend," he said. "It's in the mindset. You spent your harvest. I planted mine again, as savings." The words lingered in the quiet evening air like a truth too simple to ignore. For the first time, Dinesh saw that fortune had never been unfair. It had only been waiting for him to change the way he thought. That night, Dinesh walked home beneath a sky full of stars, his heart heavy yet strangely light. For the first time in years, he didn't blame fate or fortune. He blamed his own choices. And that realization became his turning point. The next morning, he went to the same post office where Ramesh had once stood years ago. His hands trembled slightly as he filled out the forms, but his voice was firm when he said, "I want to open an account." From that day forward, he began saving 100 rupees every month. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind him that every seed, no matter how small, carries the promise of life. Months turned into years, and Dinesh slowly began to change. He spent less, worked harder, and smiled more. Each deposit he made wasn't just money, it was a symbol of discipline, patience, and new beginnings. With time, his efforts bore fruit. He bought a bullock cart, then a tractor, and eventually built a small brick house for his family. The same man who once lived from day to day had now learned the art of tomorrow. His fields were thriving again, but more importantly, so was his spirit. He smiled, not because his life had become easy, but because he had finally learned how to grow. The soil hadn't changed, nor had the seasons. What changed was him, and that, he realized, was the greatest harvest of all.